Rather than play each of the three major scales, D, G, and A, separately on the flute, like I did on the whistle, we're going to combine them all into a single lesson. If you want to go back and take a look, maybe spend a little bit more time with each one, feel free to check out those lessons as well on the tin whistle side of things. The main difference here on the flute, of course, is you're working with the embouchure. So when you practice these, it's extremely important to make sure that each note sounds clearly. The embouchure is very easy to lose as you're playing, especially if you haven't been doing it very long. So make sure that you get each note properly sounding. So for example, we'll just play a low D. So if you hear it breaking like that, make sure you go back and get that note to sound properly. And also experiment by rolling the flute around a bit. It's pretty easy to tell if you're overblowing or underblowing. So if you're rolling it too far out, it tends to sound a bit more breathy. And if you roll it too close, it can break the note and jump the octave and that sort of thing. So again, just play each note really slowly, and so make sure that each sound comes out properly, so you know kind of where that proper angle is for your embouchure. So always feel free to go back and take a look at the embouchure lesson as well. We spend a little bit more time on that. So starting with the D scale here, and then we'll go on to the G and the A as well. So again, play each note slowly and make sure that it sounds properly. On the end, you may have noticed I played the high D with this finger up. I do that on the whistle as well. The reason for that is that if you play it all fingers down, it can still work pretty well, but it tends to not be quite as clear, and you can kind of hear the difference here. It's a lot easier to break that note if this finger is down. You can kind of hear a little bit of wavering in there. So try it both ways, but again, I tend to play with that finger up just to kind of lock it in a bit better. So that's the D scale. We'll jump to the G scale next, which is basically the same concept, except we're starting in the G. The main difference here is that instead of a C sharp, which is all fingers off, we've got a C natural. There's a couple of ways to do that, depending on the instrument. The most traditional way to do it was just with these two fingers down. That's usually how you do it on the whistle, and it happens to work on this instrument. If that doesn't work as well, if it's not sounding as clearly as you like, this is the other option. With these two fingers down too. Still another way is if you have a keyed instrument like this, you have a C natural key right here. I wouldn't recommend making that your primary, just because there's a lot of ornaments that you can use with this particular cross fingering, but feel free to try it if it works, and we'll kind of play all three after we run through the scale. So here's the G scale. So same as before, play it nice and slowly and make sure each note sounds. Again, when you get to that C natural, a couple of ways to try that. So that's the last one, is using the key, and in order to do that, it's a little bit different, which is why I usually don't recommend making that your primary way of playing the C natural. You're actually playing a B, and you're hitting that key. So you may or may not want to do that. Again, I would work on the cross fingering first and see which works out the best for you. So that's kind of your C natural there. The A scale, I would say, is the hardest of the bunch, because you do have to use a key in that case if you've got a keyed instrument. The other option is to do a half holing like we do on the whistle, and it works pretty well on the whistle because you're playing vertically like this. It's just a little bit easier to cover that note. If you're playing across like this with just the pads of your fingertips, it's a little bit tricky to get that. If you're playing with the uilleann pipe fingering like this, it's a bit easier. So play around with that. If you've got the key, here's where I would recommend using the key. So I'm going to run the A scale, and you can hear how that works. So there again, we've got the G sharp, and I use the key for that. In which case, you're playing a G, and you're just opening that extra key there. So you can kind of hear how that works. If you are going to half hole it, again, it gets a little bit tricky. So it's pretty easy to miss and either play a G natural, which can sound kind of strange in an A tune, or you just miss altogether and you're just still playing an A. So practice that if you are going to half hole it. If you have a keyless flute, spend a bit of time on that one, and make sure that you can get that to sound properly if that's your best bet. So as always, feel free to email if you got any questions, and hopefully this helped you out a bit.